Cole Harrison had spent 10 years living alone on a mountain above Red Valley, Colorado. He came into town only when he needed salt, ammunition, rope, or dried goods, and he avoided everyone else's troubles. But one hot afternoon in 1886, he heard laughter coming from the Copper Penny Saloon. It wasn't friendly laughter. Someone inside said Clara Whitmore had no choice but to accept a labor contract because her father's debt had passed to her. Cole stopped walking. He had heard those words before, years ago, and something inside him broke open. He crossed the street and entered the crowded saloon, even though he had promised himself never to interfere in another person's problem again. At the center of the room stood Harlan Briggs, a wealthy cattleman who controlled much of Red Valley through his ranch and bank. Beside him stood Clara, a woman in her late 20s, wearing a faded blue dress and worn cotton bonnet. Her hands were rough from years of farm work, but she stood proudly with her chin raised. Briggs claimed Clara's father had signed a contract requiring her to work for 5 years to settle his unpaid debt. Clara had only learned about the agreement after her father died. Cole demanded to see the contract. As he read it, he noticed a clause allowing Briggs to reassign the obligation. He realized the document had been designed to trap Clara. Cole asked Briggs how much money remained on the debt. The amount was enormous, but Cole quietly removed a heavy leather pouch from his coat and placed it on the bar. He told Briggs he would pay the debt in full. The room became completely silent. Briggs questioned why a man who barely knew Clara would spend so much money on her. Cole simply answered that he was paying a debt, not buying a person. He reminded Briggs that the contract existed because of a monetary obligation, and once the debt was paid, the agreement should end. Briggs hesitated, realizing Cole knew enough about local law to make the matter dangerous for him. After counting the money twice, Briggs finally signed the release. Cole folded the paper and turned toward Clara. He told her she was free and offered her the guest room at his mountain ranch until she could decide what to do next. Clara followed him outside with a small carpet bag. Before leaving, she made one thing clear: she owed him nothing. Cole agreed. He had not bought her loyalty or obedience. He had simply refused to watch someone be trapped when he had the power to help. They began the 8-mile journey toward his ranch, mostly in silence. Clara rode behind him, handling the horse confidently. Halfway up the mountain, Clara finally asked why he had entered the saloon when everyone else had chosen to ignore what was happening. Cole kept his eyes on the trail and said he disliked hearing people say someone had no choice. Clara quietly admitted that she disliked those words too. When they reached the ranch, she expected a lonely cabin, but instead found a carefully maintained property with strong fences, a barn, a garden, and a peaceful house. During the next few days, Clara began helping without being asked. She repaired fences, fixed a damaged chicken coop, and started preparing coffee each morning. Cole noticed her determination but said little. Slowly, the silence between them stopped feeling uncomfortable. It became the beginning of trust. The days that followed brought an unexpected change to Cole's quiet life. Clara continued helping around the ranch, never behaving like a guest who expected special treatment. She worked beside him, learned his routines, and repaired whatever needed fixing. Cole noticed that she was not simply trying to stay busy. She was rebuilding her confidence after everything Briggs had taken from her. One morning, Cole found her repairing a broken section of fence with gloves he had given her. He nodded toward the work and said it looked good. Clara smiled faintly and replied that she had been doing farm work since childhood. One evening, Clara noticed an old photograph above the fireplace. It showed Cole's late wife, Margaret, standing beside their young daughter, Ruth. Clara gently asked about them, and Cole finally told her what he had kept buried for 11 years. They had been lost in a mountain accident during a storm while Cole was checking a lower trail. He had carried the guilt ever since, believing he should have been there. Clara listened without interrupting. Instead of telling him that everything had been his fault or that he should simply forget, she said quietly that she could not know what had happened, but she knew grief could make a person blame himself for things he could never control. That conversation changed something between them. Cole began speaking more openly, while Clara finally told him the full story of her father's downfall. Benjamin Whitmore had arrived in Colorado with almost nothing and slowly built a modest farm. After 2 terrible droughts, he borrowed money from Briggs's bank. The original terms seemed manageable, but the interest grew until the debt became impossible to escape. Briggs eventually demanded a labor agreement as part of an extension. Clara's father signed it without telling her, believing he would have enough time to repay everything. He died before he could. Clara had been left with nothing but debt and a town too frightened to stand against Briggs. Cole listened carefully and realized Briggs had probably done this to other families. The next morning, he rode into Red Valley carrying the documents from Clara's father's estate. He visited Judge Alderman, the local judge Cole trusted, and asked him to examine the contract. The judge discovered several irregularities in the agreement, including terms that Briggs had used to control Clara's future. The judge warned that proving everything would take time, but he agreed to investigate the bank's records. Cole returned to the ranch with renewed determination. Clara asked what he had learned, and he told her there might be a way to recover part of her father's property. For the first time since her father's death, Clara allowed herself to feel hopeful. Together, they began collecting old receipts, letters, loan documents, and witness statements. Every piece of evidence strengthened their case. Meanwhile, Briggs learned that Cole was challenging him and became furious. He sent a message demanding that Cole stay out of Red Valley's business. Cole read the message, folded it carefully, and placed it beside the fireplace. He had spent 10 years avoiding trouble because he believed isolation kept him safe. Now he understood that sometimes silence only gave powerful people more room to hurt others. Clara stood beside him and asked whether he was afraid. Cole looked toward the mountains and answered honestly, "Yes, but I'm not walking away." Clara smiled, knowing that for the first time in years, she was no longer facing the future alone.